the shader editor is used to edit materials which are used for rendering. Materials used by cycles and EV are defined using a node tree. So shader editor is actually where you add materials to your 3D model to make it look real and also interact with the environment and also with the light. You come over to this and click here, and to bring down the list of all the viewports that you have. So you scroll down to where you have the shader editor and click on it. So at first you are going to be presented with a blank area. It's blank. Why it is blank is because you haven't added any material to the selected 3D model. So what you should do now here is to either click on here or come down to this part, come down to this materials property and click on new to add a new material. So let's click on that and you'll be presented with this. Alright, at default, Blender presents you with what's principled BSDF. The principled BSDF is a collation of all the different shaders that we have in Blender. We have the base color, soft device, soft surface, we have the metallic, roughness, okay? So this is a combination of all the different shaders in Blender. You can add a node in this shader editor by clicking on Shift A. When you click on Shift A, it brings out the add menu node, and you come down to shader and you see you have the add shader, you have the anisotropic, BSDF, the diffuse, the emission, the glass, and all other shaders that are here. Alright, so for instance, we bring in the emission shader. This emission is already here. A lot of different shaders over here individually are all combined into this principled BSDF. In this principled BSDF, we have the base color, where you can assign a color to your 3D model of your choice. So let's say we want to make 3D model red. It is red on the shader editor, but it's not red on the viewport. Why is it so? Because currently we are in the object mode, and object mode only shows us the gray aspect of our 3D model. So if we want to see the color, we have to be in the viewport shading mode. So we are here now, and that's why you can see the red color. So if we change this to any other color, we are going to see the changes in real time. Alright, so now we have this material base color. The basic note we are going to use for the basic shaders and editor are the base color, the roughness, the metallic, the transmission, and the emission. Alright, so this is the base color currently, and also we can make our 3D model shiny by adjusting the roughness. So the purpose of this roughness is to make a 3D model shiny and reflective. Okay, so currently we have an HDRI. That is what we are seeing on the body of a 3D model. Okay, we can now see these trees over here. If we increase this, it's going to make it look like plastic. Another important note is the transmission. This transmission, in combination with the roughness, makes your 3D model transparent, okay, almost like glass. So if you increase this all the way to 1, you see that your 3D model is actually getting more transparent. It's going to make it look like glass. For instance, let's go to edit mode, select all this and extrude it in Z direction. This is what I mean. It's going to make your model look like a see-through model, like you can see through your model. Alright, so let's go back to the plane. So don't worry, in a little time you are going to really understand this. Alright, so basically you can also make your model emit light. Alright, so you can increase the emission strength to 5, but this is not going to affect it currently. Why it's not affecting it is because the emission value is black. Okay, so you can increase this to maybe white, okay, and then change the color to green or what you actually want it to be. Why it seems like it's not actually emitting color in any light is because you don't have a surrounding around it to show how far the light is traveling. But to further prove this, I'm going to add a cube over here and scale it, then actually go inside the cube. Okay, you are now going to see how bright this plane is. So let's do the demonstration. If we reduce this to 1, you see it's not going to be actually really bright as before. We can make this white, we can make this any color of our choice. Okay, if this was actually black, you see that there's no emission at all. Okay, so inside this, if you push the color up a little and you ramp the strength up to, let's say, 5, you are going to see the emission, because the light has something to bounce off. Like this light now coming from the plane is bouncing off from this cube. That is why we are seeing the brightness. Okay, so if I delete this cube, you are hardly going to see the emission of this particular plane. Okay, so that's that. What you really need to actually know for the main time, so things will not get cumbersome for you, is how to change the base color, then the roughness, and the transmission, and also the metallic. You need to know about the metallic too, but this also mostly works like the roughness. But before that, let me turn down this to 0, the emission strength to 0. Let's turn the metallic option around the edges, like far from where we are viewing from, has this reflectiveness. Okay, so if you reduce this down a little, you'll see that the reflection of the plane is not actually in uniform. Okay, it's actually far from where we are viewing from, and that is exactly how metals behave. Okay, so that is that. You may not actually understand that for now, you see, and also it adds some variation to the green color. Okay, let's say we made this actually yellow. You see, the metallic node turn up actually add variation to the color. It's not, this color over here is not the same as the one over here, but if you turn it down, you see all the colors will be uniform. So this is how exactly metals behave, especially metals that look like silver. They don't have the uniform silver color all through. Most parts of it actually looks darker than the other parts. Okay, so if you turn this up, you also see the changes here. So you also see the changes here. So let me make a little more demonstration. All right, so if you have this over here, almost like white, okay, you see the color is now uniform and straight across the plane. So if you turn this metallic up, you'll see the color will now look dark at some parts where light actually doesn't really touch. Okay, it's going to have that dark feel. Let's say we don't want all these notes over here, we want to add a different shader to this, just a specific one. Okay, we can click on the node and click on X to delete, then click on Shift A to bring up the add menu, and then go to shader and click on, let's say you want to add the glass BSDF. Okay, you can just add this and connect it to the surface, and it's going to make this actually look like glass. All right, right now it's reflecting SGRI in our scene. That's why you are seeing all these reflections over here. We want to add an emission node to this. We can come over here, click on the shader, and then look for emission and drop it down. And let's say you want it blue, so we can connect this to this, and it's going to emit light. But right now it's actually hard for us to see what is being emitted. Okay, so let's add a cube to further demonstrate this. We have the emission over here on the plane, and we also have the glass BSDF. We can mix these two together. Click on Shift A, go to shader, and click on mix shader. It's going to bring up this node, and this node is the node that we can use to add two shaders together. Okay, so plug the glass BSDF to the first part and plug the emission node to the second part, and then connect the shader to the material output, the surface node. Alright, we are going to have this, although it's not actually combining both shaders to what our eye can actually notice. If you come over here and move this factor is like a percentage of what we are connecting to the mix shader. At this point in time, it is at 0.5, which actually means that it's taking 50% from the BSDF and taking 50% input from the emission. So if we move this down to 0.0 something, it is only going to show us the glass BSDF. Okay, so if I hide this with H, you see what is already showing us, but there's a very little touch of that blue emission over here. So if you move it up a bit, you see it starts mixing both of them together. All right, and if you crank this up to, let's say, around 0.9 or 0.1, you see it's going to now give almost full control to the emission shader. All right, so mix shader is used to mix two nodes together. We can also replace a shader with another shader. Okay, so how do we do that? We click on Shift and S, and you see over here switch type to. So whatsoever you the next shader you are putting is going to take the place of this, the first one. All right, so I've now switched from emission to the translucent. Okay, so this is what it gives you. If you want to do that again, you can click on the and then click on Shift plus S. All right, and then you can move it to, let's say, the diffuse shader. Alright, so you can just change any color you want here and tweak it as much as you want. Textures are basically images of a particular material type that we can't create on the default principal BSDF or shader editor. So let's say, for instance, an image of a grass field, an image of a rusty surface, an image of a wooden surface. Those images can be used to affect your models. For instance, this particular image over here, which is the rock ground texture, and again, this project file is going to be included in my Patreon, so you can easily follow along with it and learn as much as you can. We have a lot of textures in Blender. So if you click on Shift A and come over here, you are going to see multiple images, image sequence, brick textures, checker textures, environment textures, and a lot of them, including the image texture, magic, Musgrave, noise, and all other textures. So let's start with the noise texture. Okay, so all these textures are pre-built into Blender to help our work easy. So to preview what this texture does without connecting into the principal BSDF or the material art, you need to come over to Edit, go to Preference, and click on Add-on, and then search on Node Wrangler. You want to turn this on. Okay, I already have mine turned on, and when you're done, you save it and close the pop-up. Click and hold Ctrl Shift and then click on the node to see what this texture does. Alright, so this is a generative texture. If we can scale the textures here, we can work on the details here. Okay, we can also work on the roughness. We can also adjust the roughness. We can adjust the distortions too. Alright, so these are generative textures in Blender, and there are lots of benefits for this. Aside from this, we also have the image texture. So image textures are default. When you click on, if you add any image texture node and then you Ctrl Shift and click on the image texture, you are going to have this pink color, and this is an error color. It actually shows that there is nothing that can be mapped onto this plane, which is your 3D model at that moment, because you haven't fit in any image into the image texture node. So to do that, let's grab a texture from the project file. Now we have the rock ground texture over here, and if you Ctrl Shift and click on this, the image inside this image texture is going to be projected on the plane, which is exactly your 3D model. So this can be used in various ways. You can actually plug this to the base color and then preview the shader editor. Alright, so when this is being plugged in, you can also adjust your roughness and a lot of stuff here to make it shiny, like make it look like the rock are being underwater. You get, so whatsoever you do here is going to affect the image station, thereby affecting what is being fed into the material output. Okay, if you don't want any shininess, you can just increase the roughness of this. Aside from just having one image as a texture for our materials, there is what we call PBR textures. PBR textures, the meaning is already on the screen. Alright, and this actually helps to give more realism to your models. Alright, so the PBR textures consist of a lot of texture maps gotten from the same image texture to give realism to what model you're adding those image textures to. So most image textures comes with the height map, the rough map, comes with the glossy map, comes with the ambient occlusion map, and all others. Okay, so all this can be fed into your principal BSDF to give your work more realism. Alright, so let's make use of the PBR in this project file. Let's grab the height map over here. Let's grab the roughness map over here. This roughness map, if you preview this, is actually what is being used to drive the roughness of the image texture you are using. So if you Ctrl Shift and click on this, you are going to see the only black and white images. Alright, and to interpret this definitely means that the black portions of this texture are going to be shiny, are going to be the reflective part, while the white portions are going to be the less reflective part, and then the gray portions too are going to have a little bit of reflectiveness. Alright, so to preview this, connect color of this to the roughness. You actually see some changes. Some part of this is actually going to be rough. To further see this, we can also adjust these black and white values. by introducing a color ramp. So head over to the shader editor, shift on Ctrl A and go to the converter and click on color ramp. Connect the color to the factor and then the color to the roughness of the principal BSDF. But to see what is going on inside the color ramp, Ctrl Shift and click on it. Alright. So nothing literally changed here except you start adjusting these values. We are now pushing this black very closer to the white. Okay. So now you see that most of these parts, when we click on the principal BSDF, that most of these parts are going to be actually very glossy. So let's Ctrl Shift and click on this principal BSDF. And let's reduce the intensity of the HDRI a little so we see what is going on. Alright. So yeah, look at it here. So you now see the reflection. You can now see the reflection. This is reflecting our HDRI. Alright. So if you pull this down, you are not going to see the reflection anymore. But if you pull it closer, you are going to see the reflection. Alright. So this controls how reflective your 3D model is. You can as well connect a color ramp to your roughness map in order to control how reflective it gets. Color ramps can basically be used anyway to control the whites and black values of any texture. So let's say we don't want to use this image roughness. We can replace it with, let's say, a noise texture. And to preview what this noise texture does, this is it. Alright, so we can connect the factor to the factor of HDRI, to the factor of the color ramp, and then Ctrl Shift and click on it. Then control the black and the white values from here. If you pull this white, it's going to pull itself too. Then if you pull it away, it starts developing the gray values. Alright, as it is, we have the black, we have the gray, and we also have the white. Alright, previewing this, if you click on the principal BSDF, you are going to see that the parts that had the black colors are going to be reflective. This is it over here. Aside from having the roughness map of the image texture we are using, we can still drive the roughness of that particular image using another texture. Let's take it back to the roughness, and you want to change this to non-color. Okay, because the non-color now is going to use the black and white value of what is being fading in this roughness map. To further make this real, we can also make use of the height color data of this image texture. Okay, so let's just click and drop it here. This height color data of this image texture can be used as a bump map. So we need to add a bump node. Shift A, go to vector and click on bump and drop it between the height and the principal BSDF. To preview what this does, Ctrl Shift and click on it. This is the bump map. The black and the white parts are going to have different heights when we start connecting this to the bump. So let's connect the color to the height, and by the way, you need to change this to non-color, so it uses the non-color data of this, which is just the black and white values. Okay, now let's view this on by clicking Ctrl Shift and click on it. So now this is what the bump map does. Okay, so you see, like it actually fakes the height of the texture used to drive the bump. Okay, so we have this. It's actually making the white parts go up and the black parts go down, but as it is, it's just giving us an illusion of the depth of this particular texture. It's just making light react on it as if this ground was actually bumpy. Okay, so this is how the bump map is. So if you connect it now to the normal, and when we preview the principal BSDF, it's going to look as if this ground is actually bumpy. Alright, because it's now giving some shadows over here. If you cut it now, we are now going to see all this. And by the way, to cut any nodule in the shader editor, just hold on Control, then click on your right mouse button and draw a line across that nodule to cut it. Alright, so now you can see what the bump map does. This is with the bump map. It affects the depth of this image texture. Okay, this is with the bump map and this is without the bump map. Everything actually looks flat without it. Okay, so we add that over here. And then another one that we can use is, another texture we can use is the displacement map. So let's take a displacement texture gotten from the same image texture we are using into the shader editor. So if we preview this, Ctrl Shift click. This is the displacement map. To view this well, we need to change this color to non-color. Alright, so this is the displacement map, and this is actually going to displace our geometry. So how do we make use of this? To make use of a displacement map properly, we are going to add displacement node. So click on Shift A over the shader editor, and on the vector go to displacement and then drop it here. Then connect the color to the height. Alright, after connecting it, you can preview it to see what it's going to give you. Alright, this is a displacement. So these parts that are actually lighter in color is actually going to go up, and these other parts that are deeper in color are actually going to go down. Okay, so it's more like the bump, but this directly affects our model. We can only connect this to the displacement of the material output, not the volume, not the surface. So let's connect this, and now we see we don't have any significant changes. Okay, if you cut it, you are going to see what it does. There's a little change, but that is not the main function of the displacement. The displacement is actually going to work well when there is enough geometry on the surface we are adding it on. So let's subdivide this plane. Currently it's just a flat face. It's actually a flat face. Right click on it, click on subdivide, click on this box and increase this to say, let's say 100. So now we have enough faces for this mesh to be displaced, but still it's not being displaced. Why? Because we have not turned on the bump and displacement value in the shader editor. So to do that, come over to the shader editor and click on N to review this property bar. Alright, so go down to the option, click on the option, click on the settings, and then over to the displacement over here, click on bump and displacement. And once we click on this, it is going to shift our 3D model. Alright, you see what it does. So this can be further controlled. So displacement is just like bump, but it actually affects the geometry of whatsoever surface we are adding it on. Alright, these are actually really spiky, and we can control this by adjusting the scale of the displacement map. Okay, so what we need to do here is to reduce the scale. So let's use 0.05. So actually, if you look at it from the right orthographic view, you are going to see that this has actually distorted our mesh, alright, according to values from the displacement map, and this actually looks more bumpy, okay, and realistic. So let's shade this smooth and then add subdivision surface to it. So the more subsurface we add to this plane, the more displacement we are going to get, because we are actually giving it more faces to displace. Okay, so let's do away with the subsurface. Alright, so now you see this actually looks more realistic than before. Basically, these are the textures that you can use to make your 3D models look realistic. Okay, and these are just PBR textures. Alright, but one more thing, if this is a surface that you need to unwrap by yourself, you need to introduce the texture coordinates, and we can do that by clicking on any texture and click on Ctrl T to bring the texture coordinates and the mapping node. Okay, you definitely need to use this, because if it's just a flat plane like this and you want to apply a texture to it or PBR material to it, you are good to go. But if it is a 3D model that you need to unwrap, where you need to get the UV information of that 3D model, you have to make use of the texture coordinates and the mapping nodes. Okay, so currently if we move this from generated to vector, we are not going to have any significant change, because this is actually a plane, and a plane is a plane in Blender. There is no two ways about it of unwrapping it. The unwrapping data of a plane in Blender is the same as the generated texture coordinate information of that same plane. So that is why you're not seeing any significant change over here. Alright, so the UV going into the vector is the same as the generated texture coordinate going to the vector of the mapping node of a plane. If we actually we're using another 3D model that we actually needed to unwrap, let's say like a football, we are going to need this, and after unwrapping we make use of our UV connected to the vector. to get the UV information of whatsoever we are unwrapping. Alright, so once that is done, you need to connect all this. You need to connect all this vector into your different image textures. Okay, so the UV information of whatsoever you unwrap can pass through this straight to the different image textures, so it can be projected normally onto your 3D model. Another thing is, instead of importing your image textures one by one into Blender on your 3D model inside the image and the shader editor, instead of doing that one by one, you can simply click on your principal BSDF, and with your node wrangler turned on, you click on Ctrl Shift T. So what Ctrl Shift T does, it opens your file manager to import the principal texture setup, and here you are going to select more than one texture. So let's say we need the roughness, we need the displacement, we need the color information, and we have the color information, we need the normal displacement, we need the roughness, and also we need the height. Okay, let's say we need all this, so select all of them and click on principal texture setup, and Blender is going to set this up for us automatically without us bringing in these textures one after the other, and then you see what it has done over here. Why this is different from the one we did is because Blender is using the height texture, the height map, to drive the displacement of this. Alright, so, and even with this, we can still control the depth, we can still control the height as it is. So realistic. Alright, you can jump in over here and start adding your particles, your grass particles over here. It's going to be very, very realistic. Alright, so that is a better way of importing all your image textures if they are all in one folder. Okay, another thing we are going to do now is mixing textures. This particular part is going to help you understand how to mix textures. Okay, so mixing textures is very important in Blender. Most times we don't have the exact information and the color map and the height map we need from one particular texture. Maybe a texture of a wall we snap, we may not have the roughness map from it. How do we mix textures in Blender? Let me make a simple demonstration of this. Let me bring in the gradient image over here, and this project file is going to be available on Patreon, so you can head on to Patreon, can get all my tutorials, project files. Alright, so now this is a gradient image texture that I made, so let's preview it. Ctrl Shift and click. So this is what we have. Alright, so this black and white value from here fade into the base color produces this. Alright, so now we can use this information from here to drive in the kind of textures we want seen on our model. Alright, so for that demonstration, let me bring in the ground image texture, and let me also bring in the grass image texture. Alright, to combine these two image textures together, we are going to bring in a node called under the color called mix RGB. So this mix RGB, the same, is almost like the mix shader node, but it connects two textures together. So if you put one texture into factor and color 1 and put the other into color 2 and preview this mix, we are going to have a mixture of the ground texture and the grass texture. Alright, so this mixture can be controlled by the factor. So if you pull this down close to 0, we are having the ground texture, and if you pull this up to 1, we are having the grass texture. Okay, so to control this, we need a black and white value. Alright, so we can connect this color into the factor. When we preview the mix shader, you are going to see that the part that actually has the black color is going to show the ground, and the part that actually has the white color is going to show the grass. Alright, why is this so? Because these nodes are in binary. The upper part is 0 and the lower part is 1. So whatsoever texture you plugged into the color 1 is going to be 0, which takes the place of black, and the one that you plug into color 2 is 1 and it takes the place of white. Alright, so this black and white information is actually used to drive where these textures are being placed on the 3D model. As you can remember that we can replace this, let's make use of a gradient texture to drive where these images are placed. Alright, normally we have this texture now. Alright, this texture doesn't have a fixed color. This part here is almost black and this part is almost white, so in between there is a color. all right, the black fades into white. So if you connect it into the mix and preview it, you are going to see that the black part has the ground texture on it, and then this other part has the complete grass texture on it, and then this middle part where the black is fading into the white has a mixture of the grass and the ground. So to further preview this, let's add a converter coloram, so we can see. So if you draw this black, you see that if you draw this black closer to the white, you see that the ground is actually moving closer to where the grass is, all right, and then the grass is actually fading out. So if you also move these whites together, you see you are giving more strength to the grass and it's approaching the ground. And at the middle of this, let's preview this. At the middle, which is this part, the middle, you are going to see the opacity are going to be like 50-50. So you are going to see both of them on top of each other. So that's why you are seeing grasses on top of ground here. Okay, so let's make the final demonstration on this. Let's bring in these radial gradients. So this radial gradients has this color information. We are going to see that at the edges where we have the white dominating the black, if you use it to drive this mixed texture, you are going to see the grass surrounding the ground. Okay, and if you push this into the coloram and then drive it into this mix shader, you are going to have this where you can easily control it to our liking. Okay, you can also make it fade out and stuff like that. The fun part of mixing textures is by using any height map. So let's make use of the ground height map over here, and this is the information we have from the ground height map. All right, so if you put this into the mix shader and then preview this is actually going to blend seamlessly if we add a coloram to it and then pushing the black value and also the white values. Okay, so we can push this in. So this can be likened to a field that the grass are growing on one side and then we still have ground on the field. Okay, to preview this, it is what it does. So the part that has this black is going to be filled with the ground image texture, and the part that has this white is going to be filled with the grass. Okay, so if we preview this on the mixed texture, this is what we're going to have. This is so realistic. All right, so realistic, and as such we can even make this to be a displacement. Okay, we can choose to have a displacement over here at the displacement node. Draw this down, connect the displacement to this point and connect this to the height of the displacement. Okay, and then connect this to this point. All right, so at this point, to turn on this displacement, we need to do this displacement and bump. All right, then come over here. Why it's taking this up is because this is the maximum height of the displacement and it doesn't have enough vertices to adjust according to the height information of the displacement. That's why it's taking the whole face up. So to work on that, we need to subdivide this. Let's take it to, let's say, 100. All right, so this is what we are beginning to have. All right, and over here we can just come and adjust this. Let's give it 0.05. okay, and you see what this does. We can actually invert this if we want to. You can come over here and search on invert this color over here. So you make the ground go up and then the grass be on the floor. All right, so we can also adjust the inversion, all right, to actually make things look a little more flatter and believable. Okay, so this is it. Let's actually make this go down. Not actually shade textures can be mixed. You can actually mix a green with purple. All right, you can basically mix anything as far as you have something controlling the factor. Okay, so now aside from image textures, you can use noise texture to drive the mixtures of anything. Okay, so to preview what the noise texture does over here, you can see this. You can adjust the scale of the noise texture to get a glimpse of where you want your colors to be. If you're mixing textures, you also have a glimpse of where your textures are going to be. All right, so you can also draw this closer and then you can preview it to see where your colors are going to be mixed. All right, so there are lots of creative freedom over here. You can just set this on this plane, then rotate it to cover your sky, and then you can also animate the scale. So the best way to do this is to click on Ctrl T, add a mapping node and a texture node if you have the node wrangler enabled, and then you can control the movements. You can control the movements of this. You can actually animate the movements, and it's still going to maintain the same scale of the noise textures. Alright, so this is a fun way of controlling mixing textures together and having a very nice presentation of your 3D model. Let's make another example to further help you understand how this is being done. Alright, so let's make use of this. Currently we don't have any material now, so let's add a new one, and let's bring in the color information and connect it to the principal BSDF. This is what we have over here. What you can do, you can bring in the color RAM over here to adjust the black parts. Okay, so now we have the black and white information here. So under this, we can bring in the roughness. Alright, the roughness texture. To preview this, you see what it does. So these black parts are going to be actually reflective, and the white part are not going to be reflective. So you can connect this to the roughness, and you can preview what we have here. Alright, so currently this is what we have. The white parts are actually reflective as it is over here, but the black parts are not reflective. Okay, we can also add the displacements. We can also add the displacements over here, then add the displacement node and change the color space to non-color. Actually, don't forget to do that over here, the roughness. Change it to non-color too. Then connect the color to the height, and then connect it to the displacement. Alright, now you see what it does. It has actually displaced our model. You see, that's lifted it up. So what to do to actually really show that is to come over here on the shader editor and change it from displacement to bump. Okay, and then control this. Alright, so let's just keep it at 0.05. Let's keep it at 0.05, and also use this normal DX to add the bump material. Okay, add this bump material over here, change it to non-color, connect this color to the height, and then connect this to the normal. So this is what it does. We can actually reduce this a little. So now we have this with just a plane. We have this, and then you know what you can do with this. You can duplicate this and make it like the top of your couches and stuff like that. If you actually want to change the color of this image texture, we can add the mix RGB over here and take the color from the color RAM to the factor. Alright, then you can choose the color one, which is actually the black value. You can make the black value black, then make this any color of our choice. Alright, you can make this any color of our choice, maybe something closer to this. You can also change this, not just black, maybe any other thing, any color you want. Let's say this. So by now you can apply as many textures as you want into your 3D model and make it look realistic by using the displacement, the bump, and the PBR textures. Okay, and also you've learned how to use the textures as a factor in a color RAM, which is this over here. Okay, so you can also add surface division to actually make this look more smoother. Alright, so you now see what this gives you now. So guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. If you really enjoyed it and learned something from it, don't forget to give this tutorial a like to make other people find out about it. More tutorials are going to come up in subsequent video. Kindly subscribe to this channel. See you on the next one.